Welcome back to the Student Hub Live event for Early Childhood Studies. This session is about reflective thinking and practice, and I'm joined by Sue Callan, who is a tutor, an associate lecturer with the Open University. But you've also been very much involved with play and creativity. But before I ask you how you got involved with all of that, Sue, we've been having some questions in the chat. We've been talking in the previous session about placements, about finding access to children to be able to observe, to test some of the ideas that are going to come out in the module material. Some people have been talking, HJ, about how they might have access to children. Some have got children with therefore no time to go and observe other children, maybe. So tell us some of the things that people have been saying, and then I'd like to ask Sue about what she tells her students.
There's quite a few people who are saying they have children of their own. So Karima has a 6-month-old baby. Stacey has a 20-month-year-old boy. Alice has been working in a private day nursery for a few years, and she says she loves mud play and forest schools and activities like that.
Vincent has freedom.
Yeah, apparently, yes.
Vincent is also drinking a lot of coffee.
But I really like Gareth's comment as well, because he says, I don't have children, but he has a lot of nephews and a lovely niece. And her being the oldest, she's perplexed him because she'd always say everything, but now she's older and a teenager, she's bottling it all up. So he's decided to go on a BSc in child psychology to give it a shot, see if he can understand what's going on there.
The drastic measure,
yes.
but I'm sure will be worthwhile nonetheless.
But lots of people volunteering in local play groups at their church, doing childminding as well. So there's lots of different experiences here.
So people are being very creative about the way that they're able to access and interact with various groups of people. Is that what you find, Sue, with your students?
Yes, I've already had contact with my student group, and somebody contacted me during last week to say they'd got 3 children under 5, so that a placement was going to be a challenge, to say the least. So I would say that if people contact their tutors, if they've got any concerns, then they're going to get some reasonable advice. But also, I think what's nice about what's coming in there is people recognising the value of the experience that they've got, and that everybody's got something to bring to the module. So placement absolutely isn't a fundamental requirement. As Natalie said, you know, it's something that could enhance the experience if you're able to do things. But I told my particular student last week that she would surely be going places with her children, and toddler club or play park or whatever, and those are the places where she would have opportunities to kind of think about types of play and the way that children engage with play.
So Sue, I wonder if you could tell us a bit about how you got involved in play and creativity as an area, and most importantly, I guess, how that links to this whole topic that we're talking about right now, which is reflection and reflective practice.
Okay, well, here's me. I'm not going to admit to how many decades ago this was, but I started as a adventure playground leader, and we had a hut with some fairly basic conveniences, a wood, quite a large woodland, a fire pit and some tyres. And we had lots and lots of children. But I pretty soon had to learn that even though my job title said something like play leader, it wasn't all about me. So it was one of those situations where I had to I was there to facilitate the children in whatever they were doing in a very free and open environment. I might be called upon to organise things, to resolve disputes, and I might be asked to join in the play, but I would be joining in as a playmate, not as a play leader. And I think once you have worked with children in that way, which is very open and democratic, it's quite hard to kind of take a career decision where you're going to be working them in different ways. So reflecting on reflection, that's a little story just by way of saying that experience, I know, has influenced every career decision I have made since. So I didn't become a classroom teacher. I stayed in community education. I stayed in early years. My qualification is in further and higher education because that is about the way I prefer to work.
So would you say then that opportunity for you at that time, when so much was going on, to sort of take a sidestep and really reflect on your practice and think, what am I doing, and is this what I want? Did that change then your career direction, and is that something that sort of makes reflection such an important thing in terms of getting the outcome you want?
Yes, it did, Karen. I went there thinking, well, this would be a good experience because I want to be a teacher. But I found that actually I couldn't be a teacher. I couldn't go back into a closed environment with children, having worked outdoors and in that very...
But equally, you have a very brilliant experience of something really vibrant that you clearly love. You didn't have an experience. So how did you use of being a teacher, for example? So you discounted one option and said, I'm going with this route. And your reflective practice enabled you to make those decisions that were right for you at the time. But I want to get to grips with this idea of what is this reflective thinking, bearing in mind that you actually don't really know which other option, what it looks like. So how do you then reflect on things, and how do you take those steps forward to make sure that you're doing the right thing?
Okay, yeah. So what is reflective thinking? It's always a hard one to explain. What I would say to students to start off with is that it would be really helpful in the run-up to the module start for them to think about their own journey and the things that brought them to this point. So that contribution from, I think, Gareth, yes. Was quite significant about why he's chosen to do psychology. Yes. That is a good example of reflection in going on there. But reflective thinking, it's a way of thinking, it's a way of being. It's being very conscious about a thought process. We all do reflect in a day-to-day kind of way, and it's the kind of problem-solving stuff about, well, how am I going to get here today? What's the best route? What's the best time of day? What are the variables in terms of which motorway I'm going to travel on? You're looking at all sorts of different possibilities and coming to a position, a decision. So reflecting as a conscious process in academic context and studying helps students to look at the experiences that they've had before, review those and question them in the light of looking at the module materials and having the experience of seeing what is on offer and the different theories and ideas that are offered within the module. Because in day-to-day life, we're not that conscious really of our thoughts and where they come from. We have observed, received wisdom from family and culture and background and all sorts of things. So reflective thinking is just about questioning, being really prepared to look at what we think and the assumptions that we make, and being open to new ideas.
Yeah, absolutely, based on the information you've got. But tell me then, so what's the difference then between reflecting in this sort of way on your own thing and also reflective practice, which is something quite different?
Yes, yes, and I expect that people who are not in practice are thinking, oh, maybe I'm in the wrong place, I'm in the wrong place, I shouldn't be. If we think about reflective thinking as generating some kind of action or change, then the notion of reflective practice applies to everybody. So students that come who are practitioners and working with children will have the experience of the materials and the module, and that will give them maybe new perspectives on what they're doing. The idea would be hopefully then that they can see better or more democratic ways of engaging with children and making provision for for play. The people who aren't in practice are not disadvantaged though, because they've got the experience of the materials and the way that ideas are presented to them, and they might find that actually their change action, their reflective practice, is much more about thinking about changing ideas and the assumptions that they had. For example, not very many people are terribly keen on messy play. But actually, once we have worked through the module materials and they've read Menna's chapter, perhaps in the textbook, and thought about what children bring to messy play, what they get out of messy play and the way it contributes to their well-being, that could be a significant change in the way that they then work with their own children.
And we'll hear a lot more about that later when we talk to Menna. So this whole idea then about reflective practice is really about this idea that assumptions that we have might not be the best thing. So we might have a very strong preference for something, but by using reflective practice, we're able to appreciate the strengths and benefits of different ideas within different settings.
Yes.
Yeah.
This can be quite tricky for students, especially new students, to get hold of, because within the module we bring a lot of different theories and ideas and philosophies of play, but we don't actually give more value to one than the other. We have a position in the module which we ask students to think about, but we're really asking students to kind of absorb what's there, enjoy the experience of exploring those ideas, and then think themselves what that then means for their own values and beliefs about play. So the anxiety comes from the fact that there's not a right or wrong answer, whereas students, kind of inexperienced students, tend to like certainty. So reflection doesn't offer you that security, but actually it's quite liberating if you think there's no right or wrong answer, but you just are responding in a thoughtful way to the experiences that you've had.
Absolutely. Well, we'd asked people, Sue, whether reflection was something that they felt comes naturally to them, and 77% said yes, possibly indicating why people are coming into this field in the first place, because it is often people who are very open to new ideas, etc., who might start studying early childhood studies. But that is a very positive sign, and it's very important for students to be open to that idea of being reflective throughout their learning journey.
Yes, and not be threatened by it. As I said, you know, there's not right or wrong, and actually what they will find is that tutors, because we all come from different backgrounds as well, we've all got our own ideas, and I might not agree with the next tutor, you know, about what's the most important type of play. So that debate is really stimulating, and it should be fun.
Absolutely. Now, we just wanted to end by encouraging students to post messages and contributions on their tutor group forums. And I know that we've had some students in the chat saying, when am I getting my tutor? I was so jealous because you've got some of your students already and I don't have any of mine. But it's all in a sort of massive process of you know, making relationships between the current students and the tutors and doing all of those administrative processes that get the tutor groups together, get the forums set up, all the tutorials arranged, etc. And all of those will be coming up very soon on your student home pages. So you'll start to get the details of all of those events as they're populated. Don't worry, the modules aren't open yet. You're early. So they will come in time, but don't panic about all of that. But when they do, Sue, what's your top tip as an associate lecturer here about what students should do in terms of making contact with other students on the forum and with their tutor?
My top tip is to be prepared to be brave, actually, and be involved. I mean, that we've got lots of people kind of in the hub or live already, obviously, but it is that engagement and the opportunity to enjoy the company of others that makes a difference for distance learners, because actually you can work home alone, but most of the fun is being involved in forums. And having contact with your tutor. So tutors will be contacting, as soon as they know who their students are, they will make contact with them. Respond to your tutor, use your tutor to answer all those little niggling concerns about placements or study skills or whatever. And there will be tutor group forums. My tutor group will be about 20 people, which is a nice kind of cosy number to get to know. And if you can be prepared to post messages into the tutor group forum and respond and contribute your ideas, that's the little dialogue you're having with other people in a safe space. Because nobody's going to be saying, oh, that's wrong or that's right or whatever, but it's part of joining the learning community. So that would be a very small step, a very small start to be involved in the tutor group forum, and then maybe get the confidence to go to tutorials.
Brilliant. Now, Sue, we'll be seeing more of you later, and I want to move on to the next session, but before I do, HJ, are there any other questions that relate to tutors or tutorials that I haven't already covered?
I think we got some good stuff. I'd just like to go to Rosie's comment as well, which I think is showing more about what she intends to do. She says, I'm hoping to volunteer at school. She has 3 children. She's studying, working, and her husband's on shift, so very busy life. But in the future, she aims to work at a school full-time, which is nice that she's got a goal already that she's working towards. I think as well, Daphne is due to become a mum in January, so she'd like to know any advice about how to fit around study, or is there anyone she should let know? Is there anything that the
Tutor. We like to know those kind of things, and there's always a way of coping. There's always a way of managing.
I think we have a question as well from Gareth. He's asked quite a specific one based on a TMA, and Helen Lee, who's joined us in the chat, been very useful, providing us with lots of information. It's right that it's very good to ask your tutor about this one, but maybe you could help us in how would you generally gauge whether to go quite detailed when you're writing a TMA or keep it quite broad? What would your advice be?
Oh, well, I don't know what level Gareth's studying at.
I think it's level 1 at the moment.
Okay, well, usually, and I don't know what module that Gareth's studying, actually. Do you know what? But
I think he's 102, isn't he?
Well,
Is he?
Yes.
the thing is, with any assignment brief, there's a suggested structure, and usually there's an indication of how you might use the word allowance.
Yeah.
So, bigger the word allowance, the more detail. The smaller the word allowance.
The tutor notes, the student notes even, are basically gold dust. They tell you exactly what sort of thing. So Gareth, I think it's brilliant you're starting your assignments, but you should also read the module material as well as you're going through. And look at those notes, because they will give you a clear indication. If you're asked for one example, it is often one example. But again, that whole issue of breadth and depth is a really difficult one. I guess one thing I would say though, Sue, from an AL perspective, is that we're assessing students on the module material that we provide. And so to some extent, it depends on how in-depth that module material is and whether or not you're asked to go outside of that. And those are important things to bear in mind also. Right, we'll have more later. If we haven't answered your questions, we certainly will do it in the next hour and a half. We're going to have a little break now where I'm going to show you the Briggs building, another building on campus, and then we're coming back to talk about why play and creativity are so important. But keep that chat coming. We will address questions and your ideas and your situations as we're going through. So please do keep chatting, but we'll see you in a couple of minutes after this short video.